guys. So, chapter 6. This is a good one. This is when the story really starts to pick up. You're going to get some more background information of what happened to the Earth and how Earth Mother came to be, how she came to take over, and kind of what her plan, what her goal is. You're really going to start to see some changes in Honor, and then the story is really going to start getting a little more suspenseful. So pay very close attention this chapter. Chapter 6. It's still here, Honor shouted. The townhouse was still there, barely. Water coursed down the terraced hillside, and the lower townhouses were submerged in soupy muck. Palm trees lay flat, and their fronds splayed out on the ground. Shattered glass and bits of furniture littered the hillside. Honor saw the leg of a baby doll in the mud. The Greenspoons were lucky. Their row of houses stood intact. The roofs had not blown off. All the walls were standing. Some of the neighbors had lost their front doors, but the Greenspoons' door was still shut tight. When Will opened the door, a small rivulet of water rushed out. But the water was only ankle deep on the first floor. All around them, the neighbors were dragging rugs out of their houses. They draped the sopping rugs over the metal fences in hopes that they would dry when it stopped drizzling. They carried wet pillows from their houses and wrung them out. There was no electricity. The garbage orderlies had not come, and the flies were gathering at the community garbage bins. First, the flies were ordinary and black. Then bigger flies came, heavy flies the size of bees. And finally, strange flies with iridescent eyes swarmed the garbage. Their eyes glowed green and blue and red. The stench of spoiling food filled the air. Rats feasted, tugging and clawing, fighting over scraps. The neighborhood watchtower had fallen, and orderlies were busy building it up again. Without the watcher, the neighborhood felt wild and lost. A dog swam in an empty lot where Honor used to play with the neighborhood girls. School was closed. Honor and her parents took brooms and pushed water out the front and back door. They mopped their soaking tiled floor. You see, it's a good thing we never got carpet, Will pointed out. Neighborhood watch, announced Mr. Pratt at the door. Mr. Pratt was wearing rubber boots and a rubber raincoat, too. He held his flashlight as usual, even though it was broad daylight. Everyone accounted for? Yes, sir, said Will. We didn't see you in the shelter, said Mr. Pratt. We were visiting friends on the hillside, said Pamela, and we couldn't get home. We'll need names, times, dates. Mr. Pratt took a white form out of his raincoat pocket. And you'll initial here, he pointed to a line on the form, and here, he pointed to another place, and you'll sign here. All that just for the night? Yes, unless you want an unexcused absence, said Mr. Pratt. He added, 3 of our neighbors have returned to the earth. Shh. Pamela stuck her mop in a bucket and drew closer to Honor. 5 are still missing, Mr. Pratt said. We are volunteering this afternoon to search. Is there still a chance? Will asked. We'd like to find the bodies, said Mr. Pratt bluntly. No one wants a watery grave. A watery grave. Honor couldn't stop thinking about those words. If water swept you off, then you were no place. If water sucked you under, then how could anyone ever find you? The ocean would erase your name. At night, Honor listened to the wind and couldn't sleep. The wind sounded different now that all the trees were down. The wind howled, no longer rustling gently in the palms. After 3 days, school opened again. Big striped tents stood as temporary classrooms on the upper field. For many weeks, Honor went to school in a tent. Orderlies were working night and day to repair the school buildings. "There is something I must tell you," Mrs. White announced to the class the first day back. "During the storm, there was a great deal of damage. Our pianos were flooded." Honor could not help smiling at this. She did not like playing the piano in music class. She would get distracted and forget to count, so that when all the girls were playing together, she came in at the wrong time and stuck out. "Miss Blessing has ordered new pianos for us," said Miss White, glaring at Honor. "We will have extra music time when they arrive. There is something else I must tell you, something we must all accept." The girls bowed their heads and tried to look accepting, as they had been taught. "The storm smashed our aquarium. Our octopus is gone, but he is probably safe. He is a tree octopus from the forest, and he can breathe outside the water. However, I am sorry to tell you that all of our beautiful classroom fish have returned to the earth." The girls gasped. Helena and Harriet V. began to cry. They were still sniffling when the class lined up to go outside for archery. "I can't believe it," said Helena. "Return to the earth," said Harriet V. Honor shook her head at the two of them. "Don't be ridiculous. Fish come from the water," she told them. "Fish can't return to the earth. They go to a watery grave." The other girls stared at her in horror. Helena and Harriet V. cried harder. At the head of the line, Mrs. White folded her arms and gazed at Honor. "Are you making light of what we must accept?" she asked at last. Honor shook her head. "No?" demanded Miss White. "No," said Honor. After Honor and her class returned to the regular room, they practiced storm drills every week. Mrs. White blew her whistle once to practice for regular storms, and all the children crouched down under their desks. The teacher blew the whistle twice for hurricanes, and the children lined up and hustled to the storm shelter underground. They walked quickly, but they didn't run, and Mrs. White timed them with her stopwatch. Honor's class learned the science of lightning, floods, earthquakes, forest fires, and especially tsunamis. On the first day of each month, an air raid siren sounded, a wail everyone could hear all over the island. The siren tested the tsunami warning system. If there were a real tsunami, the siren would warn everyone on the island to run for high ground. Honor's class watched films of what tsunamis had done to the islands in the past. The films were old, but they were terrifying. Palm trees flailed like grass. Waves of water rose so high they smashed all the houses before them. Dead bodies lay puffed up on the beaches. Something changed in Honor when she saw those films. For the first time, she began to understand why new weather was important. For the first time, she understood what Earth Mother was up against. If people did not join hands to secure the world against the storms and seas, then there was no hope. If enclosure failed, then the last islands would go under. Now, history and geography began to mean something to Honor. Now, strangely, she had no trouble reciting from her history text. "The flood destroyed the ancient world," Honor recited to the class. "Where there were continents, only islands are left. Where there were archipelagos, only mountainous islands remain. After the flood and the wars that followed, Earth Mother organized the great evacuation to the remaining islands in the tranquil sea. Then the Earth Mother rose up and spoke. What is freedom? What is choice? Words and only words. We need safety. We need shelter from the elements. Without shelter, all other words are meaningless. Earth Mother pledged to enclose the polar seas. She pledged to establish new weather in the north and reclaim the islands there, one by one. Finally, she pledged to make a new world in the islands of the tranquil sea, Islands she numbered and named the colonies. Honor stood before the class and recited these words perfectly. Mrs. White beamed at her and applauded. Seeing that, all the girls in their seats clapped their hands as well. "I'm proud of you," said Mrs. White. Honor flushed with happiness. "Today you've come prepared." This was true. Honor had studied diligently. But the real reason she recited so well was that the passage was not just words to her. After the storm, she understood her school books as she had never understood before. She believed them. When Honor saw films in school, she had nightmares. She dreamed of those dead bodies with white puffy skin and bulging eyes. She dreamed of a wave so tall it rose as high as her own house. She struggled, but she couldn't run. She couldn't breathe. There was no escape. "I don't want to drown," she cried to her father in the night. "You aren't going to drown," he said. "I want to move," she sobbed. Her mother held her. We will," Pamela said. "We'll move as soon as we can." "There's a warning system on every watchtower," her father reassured her. Sirens would sound, and then buses would come and drive us to the mountains. Honor gazed out the window into the great black night. "But what if the wave is unpredictable?" "Come with me," Will said. He took her by the hand and led her downstairs in her nightgown. "No, Will," Pamela whispered. There was a curfew in the colonies for safety measures. No one was allowed outside past hour 8. "It's after 9, she said. "I don't care," he told her. "She's too young." "She's 10 years old, Pamela." "She isn't ready." Pamela stood near the door, almost blocking Will. She needs to know," he said. "Will!" But he took Honor and brushed right past Pamela into the night. Honor was afraid. Her father's mood frightened her. She had never seen him oppose her mother like that. "Where are we going?" "Shh." Will rushed her through the unlit gravel lot in front of the townhouses and gestured for her to follow him. Since they'd moved to the island, Honor had never been outside after dark. The night was warm and sticky but mild, as if the sun had stopped to take a breath. The air was gentle on her face and shoulders. She wanted to look everywhere at once, at the stray cats scampering in their path, at the shining stars, the round moon so much brighter than she remembered. She'd heard from the neighbor kids what a bad place the moon was. That was where the worst people went, the crazy ones who didn't fit. They had to live on the cold, dusty moon in the lunatic asylum. "How can the moon be so pretty?" she asked her father. She had never expected it to shine so bright. "It's an overlay," her father said. "What's an overlay?" "A light show," whispered her father. "The corporation projects a moon and stars onto the sky above each city. They aren't natural." "They're perfect," Honor protested. The stars sparkled. She wanted to touch all 7 of them where they shone in a circle around the silver moon. "Can I look at them, please?" But Will was in a rush and didn't answer. He glanced often at the tall watchtower, almost rebuilt. Any day now, watchers would return to guard the neighborhood. Will hurried Honor all the way down to the danger zone, fenced off near the shore. He lifted a piece of sagging barbed wire so that Honor could climb inside the barriers. "We're going in there?" Honor asked, astonished. "But it's not allowed." "Come on," he said. "We'll get hurt." She pointed to the red danger signs posted. "You know I'll keep you safe," Will told her. She hesitated. "You still trust me, don't you?" She scrambled under the fence, and he got down on his hands and knees and crawled after her. Then she was terrified. She heard the sucking of the sea. the great dark mass of water and the crash of waves. She would have turned and run if her father hadn't held her. She thought she might be sick. She had sailed over the ocean to the island on a corporation ship, but on the EMS Serenity, no one was allowed on deck. All the passengers had stayed safe inside. Before that trip, she had traveled everywhere with her parents in little boats, but she had not known then what she knew now. Honor's bare feet touched scratchy sand. Dry seagrass tickled like insects on her legs. The ocean swelled nearer and nearer. She almost screamed. "No noise," Will said. "I want to go home," she cried as Will half carried her to the water's edge. "Yet," her father said. She closed her eyes and buried her head in his chest. "Look," he told her. "I want you to look." "No," she pleaded. "I'm right here." "But the waves," she said. She was trembling with fear. The water was going to swallow her up. Without realizing it, she began to pray. The words came rapidly as she had been taught in school. "Hail, Mother, full of grace, the earth is with you, the sea is with you. The storms sink down before you. Teach us your ways, Mother. Lead us and guide us." "Stop that!" Honor's father set her down and shook her hard by the shoulders. Honor opened her eyes in shock. "Never pray to her." "Don't you believe in Earth Mother?" Honor asked. "No, I don't," said Will. "Don't you believe she's real?" "Oh, she's real all right," said Will, "but I don't worship her. I don't trust her." Honor shrank back. "My teacher says Earth Mother is everywhere." "Everywhere we allow her to be," said Will. "Don't you see? When you pray to her, the corporation controls you." Honor did not see. She shook her head. "Use your head, Honor. Use your eyes. Do you want enclosure to enclose you?" "I want to be safe." "Yes, Earth Mother's corporation is counting on that. As long as you want to be safe, they win. They get to decide how many children families have, and what those children will be called, and where they go to school, and what they think. They get to choose where people live, and what people buy and wear. They control what people read. They try to control the weather. There are islands out there you can't see." Will pointed to the dark water. "Hundreds of islands like this one. Some are populated. Some are experimental islands for farming and for growing food. And some hold weather stations. Our regional weather station is on Island 364. The computers there run the clocks and the hourly broadcasts. They store all of our security information: names, ages, job and school selection, possible criminal activities. The corporation keeps data on all of us. Data on recycling patterns, food supply. The goal is to manage everyone." "No, the goal is to manage storms." Honor was trying to get away from the water. She was pulling with all her might, but her father held her by the wrist. "The world is big," he told her. "Weather is complicated. Do you really think the corporation should control it all? Do you want regulated skies and filtered light? Do you want every day to be the same as the one before?" He pointed at the ocean. "Don't you see how lovely water is? The corporation is an overlay, like the 7 stars and the moon." He whispered in Honor's sea. "Enclosure covers the polar seas, but she hasn't covered the northern islands yet, not at all. Why do you think everyone is still living in the colonies? Why do you think the corporation retrieved us and brought us here? Because the northern islands aren't ready. They aren't safe. She got these islands the way she wants them. She's got everyone living under her control, but she hasn't got the wild places. She hasn't even got the other side of this island. She hasn't got the whole world sealed yet, not the half of it." Together, they looked out at the water. The ocean was huge and black in the distance, but up close on the sand, The rippling waves looked silvery and clear. The sea was calm. There were no big waves, just little ones. Will bent down and trailed his hand in the foam. "Touch the water," he said. "It's unsafe." "No," Will said. "It's beautiful." He scooped up wet sand and water and poured it over her hands. She began to cry. Her father's ideas were dangerous. To call the wild ocean beautiful was crazy. To say, "Don't pray to Earth Mother," people who spoke like that got taken. They disappeared and never came back. "Is this water going to hurt you?" Will asked. "Let me go home." "Is this water going to hurt you?" he demanded. The warm, wet sand felt thick and sticky. She was afraid she couldn't get it off. She stumbled back toward the fence and stepped on something sharp. She thought it was a stone. Her father picked up the sharp object as they walked home. He picked up another and another. "These are broken shells," he said. "You can dig with them, or you can just collect them and take them home." They were hurrying back to their house now. With each step, Honor felt a little safer. Her heart began to calm. "We can't take them home," Honor said. "Then people would know." She meant the neighborhood watch would know they had been to the shore. "We'll hide them," said her father. "But what if Mr. Pratt finds them?" "Honor." Will pulled her to a stop and stood facing her in the artificial moonlight. "I have to tell you something important. Are you listening?" "Yes." "Don't ever be afraid. That's what they're hoping for." In the evenings after school, only Pamela met Honor on the bus. Will was working extra hours because Pamela had no job. She talked about getting a letter from the Employment Bureau, but Honor knew her mother would not be chosen. How could she fit behind a desk? She was too big. When the two of them trudged home in the heat, Pamela had to stop to rest. Sometimes they took shelter in the shade of a ruined hotel called the Paradise Sands. The hotel was not submerged like the ones past the barriers on the beach, but it was marked with red tape for demolition. In front, a smooth driveway and grand stone steps rose gracefully to shattered glass doors. The steps were shaded by broken metal trellis covered with the sweet-smelling vines. Pamela and Honor often rested on those steps, and Pamela played number games with Honor to pass the time. She taught Honor how to count by threes and nines and 12s, and then she taught Honor other ways to count. "You don't have to count from 1 to 10 the regular way," said Pamela. "There are other ways of counting. For example, you could count like this: 0, 1, 10, 11, 100. "Why would you want to do that?" Honor asked. "Why not?" asked Pamela. "It's just notation. It's just another way to count. You've learned arithmetic in base 10, but there are other bases you can try. Base 2, base 7. It's like a secret code. It's fun." Honor liked the idea of a secret code. She learned how to count in base 2. She practiced until she could count quickly, higher and higher. 0, 1, 10, 11, 100, 101, 110, 111, 1000, 1001, 1010. Once she knew the pattern, it was easy, but she knew better than to mention base 2 at school. One day, Honor and Pamela were sitting on the hotel steps when a cat walked past. They often saw cats in the neighborhood. The cats were small and sleek and lived wild by the shore, crawling under chain-linked fences, killing rats, and sunning themselves beside empty swimming pools. This one was black, with 2 white paws in front, and he leaped down from the stairs into a shady spot filled with trash. He disappeared quickly, but Honor noticed something bright in the litter pile of smashed-up lounge chairs and broken glass. It was a blue bag with a blue strap. "Don't touch that," warned Pamela, but Honor scrambled down anyway for a closer look. You'll cut yourself, said Pamela. I'm being careful, Honor said. She reached as far as she could into the pile, snagged the strap of the bag, and brought it up to show her mother. Instinctively, Pamela glanced in the direction of the watchtower, but they were sheltered by the trellis, covered with thick vines. Pamela looked hard at the bag. She was straining to remember something. It's a flight bag, she said at last. A flight bag? From when people could fly? Honor's voice was hushed. When she was little, her father had told her stories about the time when people flew in planes, but she'd never seen anything from back then. She imagined those days were so long ago that kings and queens still lived in castles. She pictured rockets and airplanes roaring through the sky like dragons in those once upon a times when the atmosphere was not so delicate. See, said Pamela, pointing to the blue bag. There's a picture of an airplane, and it says Blue Skies Kids. It must have been a child's flight bag. Open it, said Honor. Pamela hesitated. Then she pulled open the zipper on top. The bag was floppy and nearly empty. Pamela pulled out some old candy wrappers. Honor was disappointed. Then Pamela pulled out a box half full of colored pencils and a small plastic pencil sharpener. There's something else, said Pamela. She drew out a floppy workbook. It was called Learn to Draw Step by Step. Pamela set the book down in front of them, and they gazed at the book's yellow cover together. There was a drawing of a dog, half shaded, and the invitation, Start with simple shapes and learn to draw. They did not dare open the book because of safety measures. They both knew books were not approved for private use. Owning them was not allowed. Let's go, said Honor. The book was dangerous. She pulled at her mother, and Pamela got up. They started down the steps, but Pamela hesitated. She had a strange look on her face, and her cheeks flushed pink. I want it, she whispered to Honor. No, Honor protested, but her mother didn't listen. She grabbed the book and stuffed it under her big shirt. You can't, Honor said. Pamela just walked on. Honor scurried to keep up. Please, Mommy, she begged. Shh, said Pamela. The school year was long in those days. The corporation did not recognize the old seasons, and so there was no summer vacation on Island 365. The children in Honors class kept working. They harvested their vegetables and finished weaving their table runners. They sorted rocks and minerals and learned the properties of water. One day in month 7, they sat at their desks and copied Earth Mother's famous essay, The End of Winter. In the days of old, snow covered half the earth for half the year. There was little food, little light, little hope. The world was asleep. In the first glorious year of enclosure, winter in the north came to an end. We sheltered the north from storms and cold. We brightened the dark skies. During copying, Mrs. White expected students to sit still. No talking or squirming was allowed. Think of your penmanship, she said, but the essay was long. It went on for so many paragraphs that Honor's hand cramped. She snuck a look at the aquarium across the room, where new orange and purple fish swam back and forth. Only one more day, and she would have a chance to feed them. She had been waiting for her turn. Fish monitor was her favorite job. Warm weather came to the north and strayed, copied Honor. Then she caught her mistake. She was supposed to have written stayed, not strayed. She sighed and took her white pen to blot out the error. At that moment, she saw Octavio move. He unfurled one long tentacle and then another. He seemed to be stretching. The suckers on his tentacles stuck to the glass as the octopus inched his way up the side of the tank. Why was he crawling up the glass? Was he sick? Was he trying to escape? Honor, Mrs. White said sharply, what are you looking at? Honor ducked her head and turned back to her work. All that day, Honor peeked at Octavio. She was sure he was trying to get out, but no one else noticed. The next morning at chore time, Honor went to the supply cabinet. The other girls were busy taking out the broom and mop, the brush and pan and wool dusters. Honor took out the jar of fish food. She climbed the ladder to reach the top of the huge tank and opened the hatch in the aquarium lid. She stared down into the water. The colorful fish were swimming upward expectantly, but there was the octopus as well, almost at the surface. Children were not allowed to feed Octavio. Orderlies fed him slugs and snails. Honor wondered if he was hungry. His soft body, usually russet brown, had changed to pink. He waved two tentacles in a kind of greeting as Honor looked into the water. His dark eye opened. He is looking at me again, thought Honor. And then, wait till I tell Helix this. She sprinkled the fish food, and as the particles floated downward, the other fish gobbled up the flakes. The octopus ignored them. He spread out his body. Again, he seemed to be waving, unfolding his whole rubbery being. Honor leaned over the rectangular opening in the tank's lid and stared. Octavio shifted, and she saw that he was staring back at her with his dark, bulbous eye. His tentacles beckoned just under the rippling water. All around Honor, the other students were going about their business, dusting and sweeping, spraying and wiping the desks. Mrs. White was bending over Hedwig in the book corner, showing her something. Honor took a breath and dipped her fingers in the salty water. In a flash, the octopus seized hold of her. Honor almost fell off the ladder. His grip was so strong. One tentacle wrapped around Honor's wrist, then another seized her arm. The animal was heavy, wet, and dexterous as he heaved himself out of the water and clung to Honor. For a moment, she had to squeeze her eyes shut so that she wouldn't scream. She clutched the side of the aquarium. Then suddenly, Mrs. White saw her with the octopus wrapped around her. "Don't move," Mrs. White cried. She snatched the broom from Hagar and hurried over. Mrs. White's lips were tight. Honor had never seen her teacher look this way before. Not stern or angry, but scared. The other girls were shrieking. Mrs. White brandished the broom in front of her. Then Honor knew that Mrs. White was going to kill the octopus. She knew it from the look on her teacher's face. Mrs. White wasn't going to put the octopus back in the tank. She was going to pry him off with the broom and smash him to pulp. Octavio was wrapped around Honor's chest. He was not doing his job. He was going where he did not belong. "No," Honor called. "Don't." She was 5 steps up on the ladder. Her classmates were running to the other side of the room. "Hold still." Mrs. White was trying to control her voice. Octavio seemed to hear Mrs. White. His tentacles stopped moving, and he clung to Honor's shoulder. Honor felt faint. Her shirt was dripping wet. Her heart beat fast under the weight of the animal wrapped around her. She was afraid, but less frightened of the octopus than of her teacher. "Honor," said Mrs. White, "do exactly as I say. Hold the broom handle and take 1 step down. Now take another." Slowly, Honor descended the ladder. The classroom was still. The other girls were staring in silent horror. As Honor crept down the ladder, she felt Mrs. White grow bigger and bigger. Her teacher's blue eyes were fierce. "Let go of the broom now," Mrs. White said. But Honor held on to the broomstick. "I said let go," Mrs. White told Honor in a low voice. Still, Honor held the broomstick, much as Octavio held on to her. And now, with one sharp pull, Mrs. White yanked the broom from Honor's hands, and Honor ran. Octavio was heavy. Honor panted as she ran out the door, with wet tentacles wrapped around her. She careened around the corner of the school building and ducked into the girls' bathroom with its white and gray tiles, its white sinks and silver stalls. The tiles were cool against her legs as she sank down in the corner. Water trickled from one of the sinks. For a moment, she felt safe. Then, the emergency bells began ringing. She heard the running steps of orderlies outside. Octavio slipped off Honor's body and onto the floor. Gracefully, the creature began to scale the bathroom wall. Say hi, baby Hudsy. He didn't want to let Mama work. No, he wanted to be part of it. Okay, so chapter 6. Lots of information, lots of things. So we got some background of how Earth Mother came to kind of be in charge. She's trying to protect and save everybody, and I guess they want, according to Honor's dad, they want everybody to be afraid of everything, of the water, especially in storms, so that the corporation has more control and can be in charge. Do you believe that? And Honor's kind of having a change of attitude, which you can't really blame her based on what she's experiencing, what her school is telling her, what her friends are telling her, what the videos that they're watching. If you weren't really paying attention as to what was in the videos they were having to watch, you need to go back and listen to that part of the book, because holy moly, way to terrify some people. Yeah. Now, the most interesting, weird thing is the octopus at the end. Waving at her? The octopus? What? And then what does Honor do? Now listen to her teacher. The octopus jumps on her. What's that girl do? She takes off running down the hallway. Why? So, there's too many things in this chapter for me to limit it to one thing. So I'm going to give you about 3-4 different prompts to choose from. Write about at least one of them, but feel free to answer all of them. So 1, what about Honor's attitude is changing, and why is it changing? Also, what point is Honor's father trying to make to her? What does he believe? And do you believe him? Then also, why did Honor run off with the octopus on her? Why? That octopus jumped on her and the teacher's like, stay put. And that girl runs. Why? And as always, please feel free to illustrate. This would be a wonderful thing. I would love to see illustrated. Say bye-bye. Say bye-bye.